Welcome back. I'm Kristen Eargle with College.town. I'm on Small College Conversations, and today I'm joined by Grant Farris, William Penn's Director of Athletics. Thanks for being on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, let's talk about it. You're now 6 months on the job. It was announced June of this past year, promoted to the position. What's the biggest change from going from Associate AD to Director of Athletics?
Yeah, I think there's obviously a lot of leadership and responsibility that comes with that change. I think as the number two in an athletic department, you don't necessarily have to deal with some of the problems and challenges that come to the person in the chair. But for me, I think the biggest thing was I'm a doer. I love doing all of the things, game day setup, etc. When you sit in the chair, you don't really get that opportunity. You don't have the time in the day to spend on facility setup and setting up chairs and making sure our coaches have everything for game day. So that was an adjustment for me, having to change my mindset to be able to lead our department into the future.
Now, you were with the university for 3 years prior. What did you learn from those two predecessors that you had?
Yeah, I think I consider myself one of the lucky ones. It's not too often somebody that gets to sit in the chair for the first time can say that they're around their two predecessors, nor can they say that they're friends with them. And so for me, having Alicia on campus, still she took another position here at the university. And so having her to lean on in terms of questions I have with compliance and the processes within the university has been instrumental in my success early on. And then in regard to Nick, he sat in the same chair as me. He's now our conference commissioner. And so being able to call him and see what the resources that are available at that level. One thing that he showed that was really important was making sure that you're involved at the national level, making sure that William Penn can be heard to the masses. I think that that's important in terms of brand recognition and competitive success. Kids need to know who you are. And so if your brand and your logo is not there on the national scene, it's going to be really hard to be competitive. And so especially in the recruiting landscape that we live in, where anybody can go anywhere at any time, and making sure that people know who William Penn is. So that's something I took from Nick.
When you had the opportunity, I'm sure in June you had some ideas. Okay, this is what I want to implement. What were some of the things you were so excited about putting into place?
Yeah, I think right out of the gate, I knew I wanted to restructure our department a little bit. Game day for us here at Penn is something that we do at a high level. And up until me sitting in the chair, we didn't have someone that was directly over game day specifically. So they held a number of different titles and tasks that they had to do on a weekly basis. And so something that was important for me was to have someone that focuses on that and that solely. So we restructured our admin staff a little bit to have someone that was an assistant AD for game day. So his job is he solely focuses on game day and making sure that experience is second to none in the NAIA. And the second thing would be adding flag football. It was something I was super passionate about when I was the associate AD. I really wanted to get that done. Thankfully for me, our president was on board, and he thought it was a good idea. And with the facilities that we had, and being able to provide those opportunities for women in sports is important to me. And so those were two things that I think right out of the gate, I was super excited about doing.
The last 2 years at William Penn has had the second best Directors Cup finishes. What do you attribute to that growth and consistency? What's it about the culture that's making this work?
Yeah, I think it's our coaches. I think we have a really good group of coaches right now. They're bought into what we're doing. They get where we're trying to go. I don't think we're there yet. I think we want to be on the national stage a little bit more consistently. But I think our coaches understand what they need to do to get there. So it starts with them. And then I think to be successful at this level, you have to have the support from the leadership above you, meaning our president, our board of trustees. They're so bought into our vision and where we want to go. I tell everyone our president is probably the most pro athletics person that you'll find in the college landscape. He's at every game. He attends not all practices, but he shows up to practice. Our kids know who he is. And I think that's important for the long-term success of your department.
Now, the number of student athletes has grown tremendously in your department over the last few years. Part of that obviously is adding sports. Part of it's growing rosters. You support JV sports. A few questions here. How do you balance supporting varsity versus JV programs? And when do you know when to add or drop a JV program?
Yeah, I think it's a fine line.
Mhm.
The NAI model, your roster sizes are important. We're always looking for ways that we can grow roster sizes and grow enrollment ultimately. But you have to make sure that those student athletes feel valued. And I think we've done a pretty good job of finding ways to include those JV student athletes in some of the same experiences, whether that's through media days, photo shoots, or looking ways to create a meaningful impact on the field. I know our soccer program the last 2 years, they've created kind of their own JV championship. And so we host every Sunday, we host a number of games, and they presented a team with a trophy at the end of the year. And so looking at ways you can kind of get them involved and make sure that they feel like they're playing meaningful soccer, as an example, is a way that we try to balance that fine line between the JV and varsity experience. And then in regards to adding or dropping a JV program, if we have the roster sizes to do it, we're going to do it. I think it comes back to the kids want to play. That's why they come here. That's why they accept the scholarship that we offer, and they want to be on the field or court, whatever sport it might be. And so if we have the roster sizes to do it and it's not going to be a detriment to their health and safety, we're going to do it. So we have the roster sizes that are big enough to have them. We're going to continue to have JV programs in those sports. Now, if that number falls below, and let's say for basketball, we only have 7 or 8 kids on a JV team, we're probably not going to have it because it's not good for their health and safety in terms of longevity in sport and those kind of things. So that's kind of how we look at it here in regards to when to add and drop.
Is there a tipping point for a roster size being too big, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think everybody's got a limit.
Right.
I think a lot of times we, especially at this level, we try to, when you're constantly focused on growing enrollment and adding to your roster sizes, it can be a challenge. But the way we kind of look at it here is if it starts to affect the experience that those kids are having, is when we're like, okay, I think that's the cap. And so ways we track that are retention. We have a student athlete survey that we do at the end of each season, and being able to utilize that is important. I think that the students' opinions on the experience they're having while they're here at William Penn is ultimately what helps us make that decision.
You talked about adding flag football. Is there a limit to how many sports you would continue to add? I mean, there's going to be a limit, but is there something on the horizon?
Yeah, I think for us,
leading question there, right?
Yeah, for us, I think ultimately there's always a limit,
Right.
depending on facilities and what space you have and those kind of things. I told our president when he offered me the job that I'm going to look into any and all. I'm a firm believer that the more sports we have, the better the experience for all of our student athletes. Getting kids involved in different aspects and being able to be a fan at those sports. There's not a ton of schools that can say that they attend a flag football game, a women's flag football game, and so looking at opportunities and looking to add. Do I think we're getting close to our limit? I think we are. I think we're reaching kind of the cap in terms of facility space that we have. But there's some sports out there that intrigue me, and so we'll see.
Part of that culture we talked about is retaining coaches. You talked about coaches being a big deal in building that culture and staff, consistency and leadership. How do you weigh when their openings come up, promoting an internal candidate and doing some external hiring? What metric, I guess, do you use to kind of evaluate that process?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at one, you have to see what that staff looks like, right? At our level, we don't have a ton of full-time assistants. And so a lot of times you're kind of taking a chance on somebody. But I think that there's a number of things that play into that. Like what does the program look like? Do they have a winning culture? Is it a situation where we're making a change to kind of get that program back on track? And then do they have a proven history of recruiting? At this level, you have to be able to recruit, and you have to do it in numbers. And so for a lot of our sports, whether that's a GA or an assistant coach, have they proven the ability to recruit? Ultimately, we give every assistant coach, support staff, however you look at it, We give them the opportunity to interview when we have an opening. That's something that I'm passionate about. I'm obviously an internal
Yes.
hire. And so I think it's the right thing to do. Even if ultimately they're not the ones we go with, I think for their career aspirations and those kind of things, giving them the opportunity to have an interview is a big thing. I know a lot of kids, there's a lot of times where interviews aren't a part of that process in today's age. And so being able to give them that experience, I think, is important.
What have you done to try to create an environment for your existing staff to really want to stay and continue developing? And that's hard to meet at any institution because all of us kind of like, oh. But what's that mentality like for you?
Yeah, I think it comes down to one word, and it's resources. What are you providing for your coaches to feel supported, and how are you doing that? I think for me personally, in the situation that I'm in now, we've had kind of a bit of turnover in this position the last couple of years, with Nick taking the commissioner role and Alicia taking another job here on campus. We've had some inconsistency in terms of the stability of this position. And so for me out of the gate, it was, how can I show our coaches that there's going to be consistency? I'm going to be here for the long haul, and make sure that they feel supported and know the direction that we're headed.
Something as soon as I read your bio, I thought, okay, he was promoted from within. So everyone out there that is watching this, that it's an Associate Dean, number 2 chair going on right now, they're like, okay, what did he do to position himself right there? What would you say to them?
Yeah, first and foremost, it's a relationship business. College athletics, if you don't get involved and put yourself out there, it's going to be really hard for you to get a job and move up. I mean, I think that those are the things that you have to do to put yourself in a position. For me personally, I started in advancement. So I started on the fundraising side. It allowed me to work with a completely different group of people on campus than our athletics department does, which I believe gave me kind of an upper hand. It allowed me to build relationships with those that our coaches and our admin staff aren't working with on a day-to-day basis. It also gave me kind of a intro to our alumni and donor bases, which is a big part of what we do, fundraising and other things. And so I think my advice would be to get involved. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to do the things that nobody else wants to do. I think ultimately that'll put yourself in the best position to be hired as an internal candidate.
Okay, so how did you win the interview?
Yeah, I think like everyone, you always try to figure out what the problems are. Being the number 2, I kind of know what the problems are, and so when you go into that interview, you got to have answers, and they might not be able to be immediate, but I think you have to have a solution to your coach's problems. And at the end of the day, coaches just want what they want, and you got to find a way to get it to them. That's not always easy. I jokingly say coaches are the most selfish people you'll ever meet. But it's also the way you want your coaches to be, right? I tell our coaches all the time, I want you to be selfish, because if you're not selfish, you're not doing everything that you need to do for your program. And so I encourage them to do that. And I think it went over well in the interview process on how we were going to address some of the things that we needed to change. And I think ultimately that's why I got the job.
That was a funny quote, by the way, as it coach's wife there. I'm not going to comment on that. Okay. So potential sports out there that what excites you the most about maybe some things you're looking at, or maybe you don't want to share at this point, but are you looking at anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're in the process of adding women's flag, so that one is the one, right in my forefront. But I do think there's we have some interest in pickleball. It's very, very new. Yes. Very, very new. There's not a lot of schools that have it out there, but it's something that's on the list of potentials. But I think outside of that right now, I think we're kind of limited in terms of the resources that we have in regards to facilities and the weather. The weather in Iowa kind of limits us in terms of some of those outdoor sports. So I would say pickleball is probably the other one that interests me.
Any thoughts on eligibility? There talks around fifth year eligibility. What you want to weigh in or bypass the question?
I think that's the million dollar question right now, right?
Yeah.
I think there's pros and cons to it. We've been saying quite a bit that the devil's in the details, and there's so many what ifs in terms of semesters and scholarship limits and all of those kind of things. But I do genuinely believe it's going to happen. And so the mindset we've kind of been taking here at Penn is how do we take a proactive approach to the situation and put ourselves in a position to be successful when that situation does arise, because I do think it's coming.
Last question for you. What else is on the horizon right now for the Statesmen?
Yeah, we're looking into, we just added our first NIL platform. So we're pretty excited about that. We've had it for about 30 days now, and that's going really well. So just looking at opportunities to provide our student athletes with resources. So just continuing to grow on that aspect and looking forward to what the winter sports have to come.
Incredible stuff. Grant, thank you so much for your time. Continued success.
Thank you. I appreciate it.